haven't uploaded a video in 3 months. My subscribers keep asking where I've been, what happened to the Kielder Forest series. They want to know why I only posted one video from that trip, why it cuts off so abruptly, why I look so different in my recent community post. Some of them have started calling me a fraud, saying I faked the whole thing for views. I wish to God they were right. My channel used to be my entire life. Urban Legends Uncovered had just hit 200,000 subscribers, and I was hungry for more. I'd spent 2 years investigating abandoned asylums, supposedly haunted hotels, sites of famous murders. The formula was simple. Research a creepy location, camp out there for a night or two, set up some cameras, and capture whatever strange sounds or shadows appeared on film. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps. Sometimes doors would slam. Once, in an old sanatorium in Wales, I caught what looked like a face in a window. The video got 500,000 views in a week. But I was plateauing. The algorithm wasn't pushing my content like it used to. I needed something bigger. Something no one else had done. That's when I found the forum post about Kielder Forest. The post was buried deep in an obscure paranormal subreddit, written by someone claiming their grandfather had been a forestry worker there in the 1950s. According to the story, there was a site deep in the forest, miles from any trail, where pagan rituals had been performed centuries ago. Sacrifices, the post claimed. Mostly animals, but the legend spoke of other offerings too. The grandfather had supposedly stumbled upon stone formations there, circles and markers that weren't on any official maps. He'd reported hearing chanting when no one else was around, seeing figures between the trees that vanished when approached. After a fellow worker went missing in that sector in 1957, never to be found, the grandfather quit and refused to ever speak about it again. The post had 3 upvotes and no comments. Kielder Forest is massive, nearly 250 square miles of dense woodland in Northumberland. I spent 2 weeks researching, cross-referencing old maps with satellite imagery, trying to pinpoint where these stone formations might be. I read about the disappearances. 7 people over the last 40 years who'd vanished without a trace in that forest. Hikers, mostly. One was an experienced outdoorsman. Search parties found nothing, not even scraps of clothing. The more I read, the more I knew this was it. This was my viral hit. I'd go alone, camp for a full week deep in the heart of the forest, and document everything. 7 nights in one of the most isolated places in England, in an area with genuine mystery and danger. The algorithm would love it. I told my girlfriend Sophie I'd be gone for 10 days, accounting for hiking time. She thought I was being reckless, camping alone that long, but she'd learned not to argue with me when I got like this. I promised I'd check in via satellite messenger every evening. I packed enough food for 8 days, 2 cameras, extra batteries, a proper tent, and a sleeping bag rated for cold weather. It was early October, and the forecast showed clear skies but dropping temperatures. The drive up took 6 hours. I parked at a Forestry Commission car park on the southern edge, shouldered my backpack and started walking north. My GPS coordinates pointed to a location roughly 12 miles in, far beyond where casual hikers ventured. The first day was unremarkable, beautiful even. Endless spruce and pine, the occasional clearing, silence broken only by birdsong and my boots on the forest floor. I filmed a brief introduction, explaining where I was going and why, promising my viewers something they'd never seen before. I should have turned back during that first day. I should have felt the wrongness then, but I didn't. I pushed on, convinced I was on the verge of something special. I reached the approximate coordinates at dusk on the second day. The forest there felt different immediately. The trees grew closer together. Their branches tangled overhead in a way that blocked out most of the fading light. The ground was covered in a thick carpet of pine needles that muffled every sound. And there, in a small clearing, I found something odd. The stones. They weren't large, none bigger than a dinner plate, but they were definitely placed intentionally. They formed a rough circle about 15 feet in diameter, with a larger flat stone in the centre. The rocks were covered in moss and lichen, ancient, settled deep into the earth. I felt a rush of vindication. This was real. I'd actually found something. I set up camp just outside the circle, positioning my tent with a view of the stones. I mounted one camera on a tripod facing the circle, and set another inside my tent facing out. As darkness fell, I recorded a piece to camera, explaining what I'd found, barely able to contain my excitement. The video quality was perfect. This was going to be incredible. Nothing happened that first night. I slept surprisingly well. The second night at the site, the third night of my trip overall, was when I first heard them. I was in my tent, reviewing footage on my camera, when I became aware of a sound in the distance. Something almost like chanting, but too far away to make out clearly. I grabbed my handheld camera and unzipped my tent, stepping out into the darkness. The moon was nearly full, casting everything in silver light. The sound was gone. I stood there for 10 minutes, filming and waiting. Nothing. When I checked the footage later, the audio had captured it. It was faint, but it was definitely there. A low, droning sound that pulsed in and out. It wasn't much, but I thought my viewers were going to lose their minds. I should have left then. I should have packed up at first light and hiked straight back to my car. But the video wasn't done yet. I'd promised a week. I needed the views. Night 4 was when I saw the first figure. I'd started a small fire just as dusk fell, more for the ambience than warmth. I was sitting with my back to a tree, with my camera running, eating a freeze-dried meal, when movement caught my eye. Between the trees, perhaps 30 yards away, something moved from left to right, parallel to my position. It was roughly human-shaped, but moved strangely. I can't quite describe it. I grabbed my camera and pointed it in that direction, but the figure had already vanished. My chest was heaving up and down, getting faster by the second, it felt like. I called out, asking if anyone was there, but my voice was swallowed by the forest. No response. I checked the footage. For just 2 seconds, you could see it. A ghostly shape, too tall to be human, moving between the trees. The image was blurred and indistinct, but undeniably there. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside my tent made me reach for my camera. Twice, I heard footsteps circling my camp. At least, I think they were footsteps. But I dismissed them as deer. When I worked up the courage to look outside, there was nothing there. By night 5, I was seriously considering leaving early. I'd gotten good footage, enough for a compelling video. But my pride wouldn't let me quit. I'd promised 7 nights. Besides, nothing had actually threatened me. Strange sights and sounds, sure, but I'd experienced those before. That afternoon, I decided to explore deeper into the forest, away from my camp. I took my handheld camera and walked north, filming as I went. After 20 minutes, I found another stone circle. This one was larger, with the stones arranged in a more striking pattern. And in the centre, carved into the flat stone, were symbols I didn't recognise. Spirals and angular marks, worn smooth by years of bad weather, but still visible. I was filming the carvings when I realised I could hear breathing. Not my own. Something else. Something close. I spun around with my camera up, scanning the trees. Nothing. But the breathing continued, heavy and wet, coming from somewhere to my right. I backed away slowly, keeping the camera pointed towards the sound, and started making my way back to camp. All of a sudden, I realised something. I was surrounded. They stood in a line between the trees, maybe a dozen of them. They didn't move, they just stood there, watching me. I couldn't make out their faces in the shadows, but I could feel their attention focused entirely on me. My camera was pointing right at them, recording. I'm not ashamed to say, I ran. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at my face and clothes. They drew blood, but I didn't care. I didn't stop until I reached my tent, dove inside, and zipped it shut, like that flimsy nylon could protect me from anything. I sat there shaking uncontrollably, with my camera clutched to my chest, waiting for them to appear at the edge of camp. They never did. When I finally worked up the courage to check the footage, I couldn't believe it. The camera had recorded the forest, the trees, and the shadows. But no figures. Nothing but empty woods. Either they hadn't been real, or they didn't show up on film. I knew I had to leave. First light, I'd pack up and hike out. 2 nights early, my subscribers would understand. But I never got the chance to leave. I must have eventually fallen asleep from exhaustion, because I woke to find it was still very dark, and the chanting had returned. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was close. Very close. Right outside my tent. Multiple voices, low and booming, speaking in a language I'd never heard. The sound seemed to come from all around me, surrounding my tent. I could see shadows moving on the nylon walls, cast by my campfire, which I'd let die hours ago, but which was somehow burning brightly again. I lay frozen, not daring to move, barely breathing. The chanting continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, it stopped. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Footsteps, slow and measured, walking around my tent in a circle. Around and around, never stopping. I could track them by the sound, the soft crunch of pine needles under feet. Then a voice spoke, clear and distinct. "Come out." It didn't sound human. The words were English, but the voice was wrong. Like multiple voices speaking in unison, harmonizing in a way that made my teeth ache. "Come out and see." I don't know what came over me. Some insane curiosity, maybe. Or the blind confidence that I was somehow protected by the camera. That if I was documenting this, I'd be okay. I grabbed my camera, switched it to night mode, and slowly unzipped my tent. The fire was roaring, flames leaping 6 feet high, though I'd never built it up that much. By its light, I could see them clearly now. They stood in a circle around my camp, in the same formation as the stones. 12 figures, each at least 8 feet tall, bone white and naked. Their skin had a waxy, translucent quality, and I could see strange shapes moving beneath it, like their internal organs were visible but wrong, arranged in patterns that made no anatomical sense. And they were all looking at me. The camera was running. I was pointing it at them, capturing everything. At least, that's what I thought I was doing. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold it steady. One of them spoke, the same multi-voiced harmony. "You came to see, so see." They parted, creating a gap in their circle. And beyond them, I could see the stone circle. But it wasn't empty anymore. There were more of them, dozens, hundreds maybe, filling the space between the trees as far as the firelight reached. And they were all facing inward, towards the center of the circle, towards the flat stone. Something was moving on it. Something dark and wet that writhed and pulsed. As I watched, unable to look away, it began to take shape, rising up, forming limbs, a torso, a head. It looked almost human, but made of shadow and something else. Something that glistened in the firelight. It turned to look at me, and I saw my own face looking back. That's when I started screaming. I don't remember much after that. I have flashes. Running through the forest in the dark, branches tearing at my skin, falling, getting up and running more. The voices behind me, chanting, always chanting. The sound of footsteps keeping pace no matter how fast I ran. At some point, it became light. I kept running. I found a trail eventually. I followed it, found a road. A car stopped. They took me to a hospital in Hexham, a local village. I'd been missing for 6 days, they told me. My girlfriend had reported me missing when I didn't check in after the first night. Search parties had been looking for me. They'd found my car, but no trace of my camp, even using the GPS coordinates from my last known message. I had my camera with me. I'd somehow kept hold of it through everything. The footage was corrupted, almost all of it. The first 2 days were fine, but everything after that was unusable. Just visual snow and crackling audio. All except for one clip. 30 seconds of me, sitting by my fire on what should have been the third night, talking to the camera about how beautiful and peaceful the forest was. But I'm not alone in the clip. If you look carefully at the shadows behind me, you can see them. Those tall shapes standing just at the edge of the firelight, watching. I posted that one video. It got 3 million views in 2 days. Everyone called it brilliant, said the CGI was incredibly realistic, and they asked how I'd done the effects. Some people claimed it was real, that they could tell. Arguments raged in the comments. My subscriber count exploded. I haven't responded to a single comment. I look at myself in the mirror now, and I see something wrong. My reflection moves a fraction of a second too slow. Sometimes, in my peripheral vision, I see myself standing in places I'm not, watching myself. Sophie sees it too, I think, though she won't say it. Now and then, She looks at me with an expression close to fear. I wake up some nights to find I'm not in bed. I'm standing at my window, looking out, or in the kitchen, or once in the backyard in the rain. I never remember getting up. Last week, I found pine needles in my shoes. I haven't been near a forest in 3 months. And every night, right before I fall asleep, I hear that familiar noise. The chanting, coming from somewhere deep inside my head, getting louder night by night. They let me leave the forest. I understand that now. I only walked out because they allowed it, because I wasn't there to die. I was there to be changed, to be marked, to be made into something else. Sometimes I think about going back. I think about driving up to Kielder, walking into those woods, and finding that clearing with the stones. I think about what's waiting for me there, wearing my face, living in my place. But I won't go. I can't. Because I'm terrified of what I'll find. I'm terrified I'll find nothing. Just an empty clearing and old stones. Because if there's something there, if there never was, then what's been happening to me is so much worse. What's inside me, growing, changing me from within. What I brought back with me from those woods. What I'm becoming. I spent a week alone in those woods, but I didn't come back alone. And the thing that came with me is waiting, changing me little by little, night by night, until there's nothing left of who I was, until I'm ready to go back, until I'm ready to show others what I'd seen, to bring them to the forest, to the stones, to the circle, because that's what I'm for now. That's what they made me. I'm bait. And God help me, I can feel myself wanting to do it. The urge gets stronger every day. To make another video. To talk about the forest, about what's really there. To convince others to go looking. I've started writing the script in my head. I know exactly what I'll say. I just hope I can resist long enough to warn you first. Don't go to Kielder Forest. And if you see my next video, the one where I say I'm going back, where I invite you to join me, where I promise to show you the truth, don't listen. That won't be me anymore. Not really. It'll be them.